What's going on, everybody? Crazy Dog back for another video. Just got done doing the AFC South. Now it's time to do the NFC South. So let's get started. Starting off with the Carolina Panthers. So their positions of need were both lines, offensive and defensive line, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. Now, with their first round selection, the Carolina Panthers selected Christian McCaffrey, running back out of Stanford. With their second round selection, the Panthers selected Curtis Samuel, wide receiver out of Ohio State. I like Curtis Samuel. He's like another Swiss Army knife. You know, you could put him at running back or you could put him at receiver. I wouldn't even be surprised if they tried him out punt returning, or kick returning, special teams. He's good at that. He'll do whatever you ask, really. You could put him at punt returner, kick returner, wide receiver, running back. Yeah. Except I think he can, he's like that good gadget player, Seeing him play at Ohio State, he electrified the offense. Then, of course, we had Zeke, too. So, yeah, Ohio State was really good. Okay, so moving on with their second round selection, the Panthers selected Taylor Moton, guard out of Western Michigan. Okay, so you solidified your offensive line. I like that pick. And then in the third round, from the Cardinals, 13th pick, 77th overall, the Panthers selected Deshaun Hall, defensive end out of Texas A&M. Now, Hall was on the other side of Garrett on that defensive line. I expect both of those two guys to have very good careers. Garrett here in Cleveland, Deshaun Hall in Carolina. And then in the fifth round, the Panthers selected Corn Elder, cornerback, out of Miami. Okay, so you solidify your secondary with that pick. Okay. And then in the sixth round, the Panthers selected Alex Arma, fullback out of West Georgia. Don't know much about him at all. And then in the seventh round, via the Colts through the Browns, the Panthers selected Harrison Butker. I think it's Butker, whatever. Kicker out of Georgia Tech. Almost said Texas Tech. No, Georgia Tech. The Yellow Jackets. Yeah. I was thinking about Deshaun Hall. But yeah. So Graham Gano's got himself some competition. Oh, and by the way, the Panthers already signed every single one of their draft picks. Yeah. So, I think McCaffrey is going to be one of the best players. McCaffrey and Cam Newton are going to thrive together. Now, overall, I'm going to give the Panthers a B+. Simply because they just got so many good playmakers. They got Samuel, they got McCaffrey, they got Deshaun Hall, who will be a monster, Corn Elder, who will be good, and then, yeah. Now, looking at their needs, they addressed every need except tight end. Maybe they can get Gary Barnidge back after we cut him. But we'll see. All right. So, moving on here. Need to look at the standings because I forgot. Okay. Saints. Oh, God. Now we got the New Orleans Saints. Now, looking at their draft, they had quite a few needs. They had 6 needs. Cornerback, safety, linebacker, D-line, wide receiver, and quarterback. And they had quite a few picks, too. So, their draft started. First round, 11th pick. The Saints selected Marshawn Lattimore, corner out of Ohio State. I did not expect Marshawn Lattimore to drop to 11. But yeah, he's going to New Orleans. You know, they're desperately trying to solidify that defense. I mean, last year it almost seemed like they had no defense. You know, actually they didn't have a defense. The only way the Saints could win games was to just flat out outscore people. You know, that's what happens when you got Jesus Christ on your offense. But now you actually got a good corner, so see where he takes them. You know, we got the Saints in the preseason this year, so that should be fun to watch. Then, with the 32nd pick, the very last pick in the first round, the Saints decided to beef up their offensive line by selecting Ryan Ramczyk, tackle out of Wisconsin. Then in the second round, the Saints selected Marcus Williams, safety out of Utah. So once again, you're beefing up your secondary. And then in the third round, from the Niners through the Bears, the Saints selected Alvin Kamara, running back out of Tennessee. So not only do you have Ingram and AP now, but now you add the AK, Alvin Kamara. I think Kamara will flourish in that offense, you know. I don't know who they're going to have start. I mean, my guess is it's going to be AP starting, and then Kamara and Ingram will kind of rotate every now and then, you know. Depends on the situation. And then in the third round, once again, they had three third rounders. Okay. With their second third rounder, the Saints selected Alex Anzalone, linebacker out of Florida. And with their final third rounder, the Saints selected Trey Hendrickson, linebacker out of Florida Atlantic. Then with their last pick of the draft, the Saints stayed in Florida and selected Al-Qadin Muhammad, defensive end, Miami. Now moving on to the top two teams. The number two seeded, the team that finished second in the South, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a team that's been having one heck of an offseason so far. I mean, God, you see what they did in free agency? I mean, damn. They may give the Falcons a run for their money, you know? Deshaun Jackson? Doug Martin just got in an accident, but he's good to go. They're looking really good all of a sudden. So, their needs... By the way, I'm going to give the Saints an average B. You know, they had a nice draft. And now moving on to the Bucs. The Yucks, as they call them, in the NFC South. So, their needs were defensive line, safety, running back, wide receiver, and offensive line. And their draft started off first round, 19th pick, with O.J. Howard, tight end, Alabama. So you get another weapon for Jameis Winston. That offense is going to be scary. And then, with the second round selection, the Bucs selected Justin Evans, a hard-hitting safety out of A&M. And then in the third round, with one of their two picks, they selected Chris Godwin, wide receiver out of Penn State. So another weapon for Jameis. And then with the second third rounder, which was a comp pick via the Jets, the Bucs selected Kendall Beckwith, linebacker out of LSU. I like those picks so far. I'm liking these picks. And then in the fifth round, the Bucs selected Jeremy McNichols, running back out of Boise State. He'll most likely be a backup for Doug Martin. And then with their last pick of the draft, they selected, Stevie Tuikolovatu. Yeah, got it. Nose tackle out of USC. So they got themselves a run stuffer. Nice draft by the Bucs. So their offseason has been amazing thus far. So let's see if it can translate to on the field. when it counts the most. So I'm gonna give the Bucks a B plus because they just made that offense even more scary. And they added a few pieces to the defense. So it's gonna be fun to see what they can do this year. Maybe they can give the Falcons a run for their money, and maybe they can even take the South. But we'll see what happens. It's gonna be fun to watch. Alright. Now moving on to the NFC South champion, the team that blew a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl. You know I can't let that go. The Atlanta Falcons, who, by the way, will be moving into their new stadium this year. Yeah. So we'll see how they can, see if they can get onto the right track in the new stadium. So their needs were offensive line, defensive line, safety, corner, and linebacker. Mainly defense, of course, because they couldn't stop the Patriots. So with their first round selection, 26th overall from the Seahawks, the Falcons, as the rivals will call them, selected Takarist McKinley, defensive end out of UCLA. This dude's got an attitude, and I think he'll be kicking some ass this year, It's going to be fun to watch him tear apart the NFC South. How in the heck are your teams going to try and defend against him? You're going to have to game plan against him too. So that's going to be fun to watch. And then, with their third round pick, because they didn't have a second rounder, the Falcons selected Duke Riley, linebacker out of LSU. So you go defense 2 consecutive picks. Then in the fourth round, the Falcons selected Sean Harlow, guard out of Oregon State, to help their offensive line. Then in the fifth round, the Falcons selected DeMonte Kazee, corner out of San Diego State. That's a good pick, low key. Another good corner. And then the second, they had 3 fifth-round picks, by the way. The second one they used on a running back, Brian Hill out of Wyoming. And then their last pick of the draft, pick 31, 174 overall in the 5th round, the Falcons used their pick on Eric Saubert, tight end out of Drake. So there's their draft. I'm going to give these guys a B minus, almost a C, because they didn't really address, they did address their, offensive line once. They didn't get any new receivers, new weapons, except for Eric Saubert, but will he even make the team? I don't even know. But they did help their defense out. But they didn't get Matt Ryan any new weapons. But yeah, that's the NFC South draft. Hope you guys like this video. I'm Crazy Dog 99. Got the West tomorrow, and then that's it for these stupid videos. I know y'all think these are stupid, but whatever. I don't listen to you people. But yeah, I'm Crazy Dog, and I'm out.